Wargamers, let's talk about a unit that's been getting a lot of hype on the internet, and that is the Tau Commander, the Crisis Commander. In the past, Crisis Commanders were largely a support unit used either for their buffs or their ballistic skill for drones, but now they're not either of those things. Now, Crisis Commanders are offensive powerhouse. So let's take a look at Index Xenos 2 here and see what Crisis Commanders can be used for in 8th edition. Before we do that though, I want to say thanks for watching. If you like this video, go ahead and hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the notification bell. That way you don't miss any of my upcoming battle reports, unit reviews, or other 8th edition content. Alright, let's get to it. So, like I said, the Commander is now an offensive unit. It's going to be used aggressively. It's not going to be hanging around on your backline. You're going to want it up front and center. And a lot of that is reflected in its basic stat line. So it has 8-inch movement, and that will change if you take a Coldstar suit, which we'll talk about next. But for now, standard suit with 8-inch movement, weapon skill 3 up, ballistic skill 2 up, strength 5, toughness 5, wounds 6, attacks 4, leadership 9, with a 3 up save. So again, that 2 up ballistic skill is really going to be what you want out of this guy. That's huge, especially because marker lights have been changed. You can't get as much of a boost to a single unit in terms of its accuracy. Having this 2 up ballistic skill on a commander is really nice. They also have 6 wounds now, although you can't improve their save anymore. You used to be able to give them iridium armor, and that would give them a 2 up save. Now you're stuck at a 3 up save, but the increased wounds along with the inherent increased toughness is good. So, right, it comes standard with a burst cannon and missile pod, but of course you do have to pay for those, and you're really not going to want to stick with those for the standard commander, and we'll talk about why that is in a minute. But he has for the greater good special rule, allowing him to fire, or I suppose it could be a she as well, allowing the commander to fire Overwatch for nearby Sept units. And it has Manta Strike, allowing it to deep strike during the middle of the battle, just like normal Crisis suits. The thing that makes it distinct from standard Crisis suits in terms of its ability is the ability to either call Manka or Kayun, which are 2 different disciplines in the Firecast theory or lesson of war, and they do 2 separate effects. Now you can only cast this once per battle. The description is a little bit vague, but my interpretation of it is that no matter how many commanders you can have, you can only cast this or call this ability once per game. It says, once per battle at the beginning of your turn, a single friendly commander can declare either Kayun or Manka. So Kayun is until the end of the turn. You can reroll failed hit rolls for friendly Sept units within 6 inches, but these units cannot move for any reason. So again, this is kind of like the patient hunter way forward. So you're lurking, you're waiting for your chance to shoot, and you take it when it arrives. That's Kayun. And Manka is friendly Sept units within 6 inches can both advance and shoot as if they hadn't moved this turn. So Manka is the killing blow, the very aggressive type of doctrine that Farsight uses. And you can see those 2 have very different applications, and you'll want to use them at different times. And which one you're going to be using is going to depend on how you load up your commander, because they're going to be occupying different places in the battlefield, and therefore one doctrine is not going to be as effective as the other based on that deployment. So, options. What do you want to do with your commander? What are you going to take? Well, really, you're going to want to capitalize as much as you can on that 2 up ballistic skill. And so that means using the commander in a way that's going to be the most effective, the most bang for your buck, and really just get a nice blow in there, a nice punch right against the enemy. And the way to do that is by going all weapons. Now, it's very tempting to increase the effectiveness of some of your weapons with supporting systems, or to want to increase the longevity of a commander with like a stimulant injector or a shield generator. And while those aren't necessarily bad things to take, they're going to reduce your fire effectiveness. And So in order to increase the durability of your commander, you'll want to take crisis suits, or excuse me, not crisis suits, shield drones. Crisis suits come in the next step. You'll want to take shield drones, and they can take up those mortal blows, those mortal wounds, or multiple wound shots that the commander doesn't want to take. And instead of dedicating that hard point to a shield generator, you can then use that to take another weapon. And the types of weapons you're going to want to take are things that are critical to the success of your army. You're not going to want to take burst cannons. You can get burst cannons anywhere else. You can get strength 5 shots anywhere else. You're going to want to take things like fusion blasters that are going to be essential for taking out very targeted units, very specific units that you need to go down quickly. The commander is going to be your guy. And so that's how you're going to want to use the commander, is as this pointed, targeted, deep strike unit. And that can be facilitated by use of homing beacons or just by, trying your luck at getting close. But really, he's going to be the most effective when you give him the most powerful weapons that you can for the opponent you're facing. So to deploy him, you're going to want to keep him in deep strike, keep him in the manta, and he can then deploy mid-battle to take out that specific target when it presents itself. And you'll want to hold off as long as possible for 2 reasons. One is because there's a general advantage to deep striking later in that you are able to more effectively counter your opponent if they have deep strikers as well, but also because your opponent's army is hopefully going to be more spread out. And this is the major weakness for commanders, is they're only one model, and they can be easily targeted by the rest of the army because they are going to be deep striking by themselves, unless you support them. And I think this is really the essential part of the commander strategy, is to support them, because they are more efficient than crisis suits. They're about 45% more efficient offensively and about 30% more efficient defensively, meaning they have more wounds for the amount of points that you pay for them. And so you'll want to bring a lot of commanders, but commanders by themselves are just going to get picked off. You need to support them in some way. And so deep striking crisis suits or Vespid alongside them, or heck, even having a ghost kill meet your commander halfway up the field is a great way to make sure that they stay alive, and also bring additional firepower to really take out a target. Because if we think about it, even if you give a commander 4 fusion blasters, it's only going to land 2 of those, and at most that's 12 wounds. But a lot of things you're going to be targeting with fusion blasters are going to have more than 12 wounds potentially, and that's if you roll perfectly. So, or on average, and then roll a bunch of 6s for your damage. So really, you're going to want to have a little bit more than just a single commander out there, and having those crisis suits or those Vespid or that ghost kill up there can not only protect the commander because he is a character, right? And if they're closer, then the commander can't be shot at, but it's also going to make sure that the commander gets its job done, which is valuable, of course. So I really think those are the best ways to deploy commanders, is take them as you can, and of course they're HQ, so there's a limited capacity to do that. But when you take them, when you deploy them, make sure you support them with some other unit that is going to be able to take some shots for them to begin with. Now, with that in mind, it's going to be difficult to use Kayun right off the bat, right when you deep strike. People are going to be moving around. You're going to want to keep getting closer to use those weapons that you're using. But after you've kind of settled down, then you can use Kayun, or you can use Manka to help facilitate getting those supporting units up close so that they can't target, your opponent can't target the commander. And that's what I mean by the way you deploy your commander is really going to make a difference. For the most part, you're going to want him up front and center, and so using Manka is potentially going to be more beneficial just because you're able to get guys closer and reposition in a way that's going to be more advantageous. But if you do arrive in a situation where you're pretty well established, you have some sort of foothold on the battlefield, then using Kayun can be effective as well. All right, so that's basically it for the standard commander. Use him as just like a big old fist going in there and taking out something that needs to be taken out. But what about the Coldstar commander? A lot of people are real excited about this guy. What's the big deal? And well, let's go through it, right? So the main difference with the Coldstar commander is he's more points, but he also has movement of 20 inches, so he's fast. Associated with that increased movement speed is a restricted set of loadouts for him. He has a burst cannon and a missile pod, and those are the only weapons he can take. He can take he can take up to 2 additional supporting systems, but that's it. That's what you get. And otherwise, it's completely identical, with the exception that your advanced move is 20 inches as opposed to the standard. So, yeah. What is the role of the Coldstar? Well, intuitively, it's to get to the backfield, or get to the forefield, get to your enemy's backline, and take out specific targets that are easily picked apart with Strength 5 and Strength 7 shots. But, you know, in practice, how likely is that? Well, it kind of depends. I think really the Coldstar is most effective late game when there's few small units running around, and you can really just, you know, use this one guy to pick off or finish off that one unit, take that objective, that type of thing. That's when the Coldstar really shines, but in the early game it's not quite as useful, and it's also when it's most vulnerable, which I think in a lot of ways makes it a poor choice tactically, because you don't want your commander just hanging out in the back lines. Of course, it gives him a better opportunity to use Kayun, but it's not worth the investment just to have a guy, you know, sitting back there and shooting off a couple missile pods. In my opinion, I want someone that's going to be playing at the top of their game the whole game. But yes, so in terms of whether or not it's a good choice, I would say it doesn't have as much of a tactical application. Offensively, it is pretty good at putting out damage compared to Fire Warriors. So if that's the metric we're using for Strength 5 shots as Fire Warriors, it's actually more efficient than Fire Warriors at putting out shots, assuming the Fire Warriors are not within rapid fire range. Once the Fire Warriors are within rapid fire range, that goes out the window, and Fire Warriors are the far superior choice, because not only are they putting out more wounds per point, but they also have about 175% more wounds themselves per point. So you get a lot more durability overall with Fire Warriors per point than you do with the Coldstar commander. And on the subject of durability, the big weakness with the Coldstar is that he's so fast. You know, he wants to go, and everybody else is like, you know, running behind him out of breath and just like, no, you go, you just go, Commander, you got this. But he doesn't got it because he's just going to get shot right away. So the challenge is getting the Coldstar commander support. Just like with the other commander, you want to support him. You want to support the Coldstar commander as well, but that can be more challenging because of his mobility. You'll either have to deep strike something or have something waiting up there for him, or potentially use Remoras. Remoras look like they could offer a good option here to basically be an escort for the Coldstar, and we'll talk about Remoras more once we get into the Imperial Armor Index Xenos book. But right now, just based on this guy here, the Coldstar kind of leaves himself hanging out in the wind, and that's challenging tactically. So how would I use commanders? Well, like we talked about, I would stay away from the Coldstar. I'd stick with standard commanders and sprinkle them in as you know, targeted offensive units. Don't just spam commanders, because that's not going to give you the durability or flexibility that you want. It can, in certain situations, in certain matchups, be a really good choice, but overall, as the all-comers philosophy, it's going to have a certain amount of rigidity that you're not going to want. There's not that many wounds in them. You're going to overinvest, and they're going to be taken apart because you don't have anything there to support them. So a balance between having a few commanders, either right in your battalion detachment or by taking other types of detachments, is going to allow you to sprinkle in a few commanders, but also have the support that they require to really perform their best. All right, thanks for watching. That's what I think of the Commander. I think they can be really strong offensively. You just got to give them support. Let me know how your battles are going, how you run your commanders, what types of loadouts you give them, and how they're performing. Whether it's positive or negative, I'd love to hear. So thanks for watching, and happy wargaming.